Daniel had never expected his small transport ship to fail so suddenly. One moment he was traveling through the quiet emptiness of space, and the next, alarms were ringing all around him. Lights blinked red, and the control screen flashed warnings he could hardly read fast enough. His heart pounded as the ship shook, metal groaning under pressure. "Come on, hold together," he whispered, gripping the handles tight. But the ship didn't listen. With a final loud crack, the engines died, and Daniel felt the pull of gravity as the craft was dragged toward a nearby planet. The ship tumbled, heat spreading across the hull as it cut through the atmosphere. Daniel strapped himself in, praying the emergency shield would hold long enough. Through the small window, he saw the sky burn with colors: blue, green, and gold, strange and unreal. Then came the crash. The ship hit hard. Daniel's head slammed against the seat, his vision flashing white. When he opened his eyes again, everything was tilted, sparks flying from broken wires. Pain ran through his body, but he was alive. That was enough. Slowly, he unstrapped himself and pushed the hatch open. A rush of air hit him, fresh, cool, and breathable. He stumbled outside and froze in awe. The world around him looked like something from a dream. Giant trees with glowing leaves stretched high into the sky. Their trunks shone faintly as if they were alive with light. Strange flowers pulsed softly like lanterns, and the ground was covered in moss that shimmered under his boots. Even the air smelled sweet, like rain mixed with honey. Daniel looked around, confused but amazed. His ship was ruined. Smoke still rose from the broken metal. He had no way to leave. "I guess this is home now," he muttered, rubbing his sore shoulder. He started walking, careful not to touch too much. Every sound was sharp: the rustle of leaves, the call of unknown birds, even the distant rumble of water. It was beautiful but also frightening. He was alone on an alien world with no idea what kind of life might live here. Hours passed as he walked. Hunger and thirst began to press on him, but then he noticed something unusual ahead. A clearing opened up, filled with movement and sound. He crept closer, hiding behind a tree. What he saw made his breath catch. A gathering of tall, elegant beings filled the space. They stood in long rows, their clothing flowing like silk made of starlight. Their skin carried faint patterns, glowing softly like the bark of the trees. Some had crowns of silver or gold, and all of them stood in silence as if waiting for something important. In the center of the clearing, a platform had been built of crystal and wood. On it stood a group dressed more richly than the rest, and among them was someone Daniel would never forget. She was taller than him, graceful in every movement. Her hair shimmered like liquid silver flowing down her back. Her eyes were bright like twin stars, deep with color. Her gown shone with layers of blue and white, decorated with patterns that seemed alive, shifting slightly as she moved. She wore a crown, small and delicate, but powerful in its presence. Daniel realized she must be someone important, maybe royalty. And when she turned, her face caught the light, soft and radiant. Without thinking, words spilled from his lips. "You're so beautiful, I can't speak." His voice wasn't loud, but in the silence of the ceremony it carried. Every alien froze. Heads turned sharply toward him, glowing eyes narrowing. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Some gasped, others murmured words he couldn't understand. Guards with spears stepped forward instantly, pointing their weapons at him. Daniel's stomach dropped. He hadn't meant to say it so loudly, but the words had slipped out. The woman, no, the princess, he was sure now, stood frozen. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, it was as if time itself had stopped. Daniel lifted his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. His heart raced and sweat dripped down his temple. I didn't mean," he stammered, searching for words. But what could he say? He had spoken the truth, and everyone had heard it. The guards shouted in a language he didn't understand, rushing toward him. Daniel stepped back, but there was nowhere to run. Spears glowed at their tips, humming with energy. Then something unexpected happened. The princess raised her hand. The guards froze at once, their weapons lowering slightly. All eyes turned to her. She didn't move for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm, but it carried power. Daniel couldn't understand the words, but he felt their weight. The guards hesitated, clearly confused, but obeyed her command. They surrounded him, but did not strike. The crowd whispered again. Shocked by her decision, Daniel stood trembling, unsure if he had just saved himself or sealed his fate. The princess stepped down from the platform, walking toward him. Every step was slow, graceful, and deliberate. Her gaze never left his. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling smaller under her eyes than he ever had in his life. When she reached him, she stopped just a few feet away. Silence fell over the gathering. Her lips moved again, forming words in her own tongue, but Daniel could not understand. Still, her tone carried curiosity, not anger. She studied him as if he were something rare, something she had never seen before. Daniel didn't dare speak again. He simply bowed his head slightly, hoping it was a respectful gesture. The princess tilted her head, her silver hair catching the light. For a heartbeat, something softened in her eyes, something human, almost gentle. But then her face returned to its calm mask. She gestured to the guards, and they seized Daniel by the arms. He struggled lightly but didn't fight. There was no point. The princess turned back toward the platform, but before she climbed it, she glanced once more over her shoulder at him. Just for a moment. Daniel caught that look, and it made his chest tighten. The crowd broke into whispers again as he was dragged away. To them, he was an intruder, a stranger who had broken a sacred silence. But to the princess, he had spoken words no one else ever dared. Words that had shaken her, if only for a second. Daniel didn't know what fate waited for him now. But as the glowing trees closed around them and the palace guards marched him deeper into their city, he couldn't forget that single moment, her pause, her shock, and the way her eyes lingered on him. He had spoken the truth, and somehow, that truth had changed everything. Daniel's arms ached as the alien guards dragged him through the glowing forest. Their grips were strong, unyielding, and their faces carried no emotion. The spears they carried hummed softly, a reminder that resistance would mean death. He stumbled on the mossy ground, but the guards pulled him forward without pause. The path curved upward, and soon the trees gave way to an enormous city carved into the cliffs and mountains beyond. Daniel's eyes widened. The city glittered like crystal, with towers that seemed to grow straight from the rock. Bridges of shining stone connected platforms high above the ground. Glowing symbols marked the walls, pulsing faintly like living veins. It was breathtaking, but Daniel could hardly admire it. Fear sat heavy in his chest. The people of the city stared as he was dragged through the streets. Tall figures stopped in their steps, their glowing eyes following him. Whispers filled the air. Some pointed. Others pulled their children away. To them, he must have looked like a strange, dirty animal among gods. Great, Daniel muttered under his breath. Day 1 on this planet, and I'm already the villain. The guards didn't respond, of course. They hauled him into a vast structure carved into the side of the mountain. Inside, the air grew cooler, filled with the scent of stone and something sweet, almost like incense. The walls were decorated with murals showing tall figures in battle, raising banners and kneeling before a glowing woman in a crown. Daniel guessed it must have been their history, moments of glory painted to remind everyone who they were. Finally, the guards pushed him into a chamber lit by a soft blue glow. At the far end of the room sat a large chair carved from crystal. And in that chair sat the princess. Daniel froze. She had removed the crown but still wore her shining gown. Her silver hair fell loose around her shoulders, catching the light. She looked different here, away from the crowd, less like an untouchable figure and more like a person. Still, her presence filled the room. The guards forced Daniel to kneel before her. He winced as his knees hit the stone, but he didn't fight. The princess spoke, her voice calm but carrying authority. Daniel didn't understand the words, but the tone told him everything. She was questioning him. I don't know what you're saying, Daniel admitted, lifting his hands helplessly. But if you're asking why I said it, it's because it was true. You are beautiful. The guards stiffened, their eyes narrowing. One of them raised his spear threateningly, but the princess lifted her hand, stopping him. Daniel swallowed hard. I'm not here to hurt anyone. My ship crashed. I don't even know where I am. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the chamber. Then the princess spoke again, her voice softer this time, curious rather than commanding. She tilted her head, studying him as though he were a puzzle. Finally, she gestured to the guards. They pulled Daniel up roughly and led him to a smaller room nearby. It was a cell, though not like any prison Daniel had seen before. The walls glowed faintly, and a soft bed of moss was set in the corner. The door sealed with a low hum, trapping him inside. Daniel sat down heavily, his heart still racing. He had no idea what she planned for him. Hours passed. He paced the room, then sat again, then stood restless. The glowing walls gave no sense of time. Hunger gnawed at him and he wondered if they would let him starve. Finally, the door opened. Light spilled in, and to his shock, the princess herself entered. No guards followed. Daniel stood quickly, unsure what to do. Hello? He said nervously. She looked at him with steady eyes, then spoke a single word, slowly, carefully. Name? Daniel blinked. Did she just... Daniel, he said, pointing to himself. My name is Daniel. She repeated it awkwardly. Danielle. Then she placed a hand on her chest. Leora. Daniel's heart skipped. So that was her name, Leora. They stood in silence for a moment, just looking at each other. Daniel realized she was trying to learn his language little by little. Daniel, he repeated, pointing again at himself. Then carefully, Leora. Her lips curved just slightly, the faintest hint of a smile. For the first time since his crash, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. Over the next few days, Leora visited him often. Each time she brought food, strange fruits that glowed softly, bread-like rolls that tasted of honey and water from crystal flasks. And each time she tried to speak with him, repeating simple words until they both understood. Water, Daniel said once, pointing at the flask. Water, Leora echoed, her voice musical. He nodded. Yes, water. She gave a small nod, her silver hair shimmering. Bit by bit, they built a fragile bridge of words. Daniel told her about Earth, its oceans, mountains, and skies. He explained how humans laughed, sang, and cried. Leora listened closely, her glowing eyes wide with curiosity. In return, she told him about her people, the Yrians. They valued silence, respect, and obedience. No one spoke directly to royalty unless commanded. To do so, especially in front of the people, was considered unthinkable. That explained the crowd's shock. Daniel hadn't just spoken to her. He had spoken with honesty no one dared to use. One evening, as they sat in the cell that had become less of a prison and more of a secret meeting place, Leora asked, Why, you say beautiful? Daniel hesitated, then answered simply, Because it's true. Where I come from, when you see something wonderful, you say it. You don't keep it inside. She lowered her gaze, silent for a long time. When she looked back up, her eyes were softer. No one, say to me. Before, Daniel's chest tightened. No one, not even your people? She shook her head. I am, symbol, crown, not Leora. Daniel realized then how lonely she must be. Surrounded by worship, yet never treated as a person. He felt a surge of sympathy, and something deeper he didn't dare name. But outside their quiet meetings, the tension in the city grew. The nobles whispered that the human was dangerous. Some demanded his execution before he corrupted the princess further. Daniel sensed the change. The guards looked at him with sharper eyes. Servants avoided his gaze. Something was building, and he feared it wouldn't end well. One night he overheard voices outside his cell, harsh tones, angry, though he couldn't understand the words. Then Leora entered, her face tight with worry. She didn't speak much that time, but she placed a hand lightly over his. It was a small gesture, yet it carried weight. Her eyes told him what words could not. She was afraid for him. Daniel squeezed her hand gently, even though fear twisted inside him too. He was just one man, lost on a world of giants, caught in rules he didn't understand. Yet somehow he had touched the heart of a princess, and that he knew would change everything for better or worse. Daniel's days inside the glowing palace cell blurred together, but Leora's visits kept him sane. At first he had counted the hours by pacing the floor, but soon he began to wait for the soft hum of the door opening and the sight of her silver hair shimmering as she entered. She always came quietly, sometimes bringing food, sometimes nothing but herself, and each time she tried to learn more words. Daniel found it surprising how fast she picked up his language. At first it was only nouns, water, food, light, sky. Then verbs walk, speak, see, live. Soon she formed short sentences, broken but meaningful. You, from Earth, she said one evening, pointing at him. Yes, Daniel replied, smiling. Earth, my home, far? She asked, tilting her head. Very far, he said softly. He tried to stretch his arms wide, then made a motion of flying through the stars. She laughed, a light musical sound that made his chest feel warm. Daniel realized she was not the cold, untouchable princess the people saw in ceremonies. Here, in the quiet glow of the cell, She was just Leora, curious, thoughtful, and lonely. One evening, as the mossy walls pulsed faintly, she asked something that surprised him. "You, why protect me?" Daniel frowned. "Protect you? What do you mean?" She placed her hand on her chest, then mimed someone rushing forward, blocking with their body. He realized she was speaking about the moment in the clearing when the guards had rushed him. He had lifted his hands, ready to defend himself even though he was powerless. "Oh," Daniel said softly, "because it's what I do. On Earth, if someone is in danger, you protect them. Even if it's scary." Leora's eyes searched his face. "Even if die?" Daniel hesitated. "Yes, sometimes even then." Her lips parted slightly as if the idea shocked her. She lowered her gaze, thoughtful. "Yrians and do not protect self, only self." Daniel shook his head gently. "That's not how humans are. We care about others. Sometimes. Too much." Leora was quiet for a long time. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "No one. Protect me before." The words cut into Daniel's chest. A princess surrounded by guards and servants, yet she had never felt truly safe. Not in the way he meant. Not in the way that came from care, not duty. From that night, their bond deepened. They spent hours talking, trading words and gestures, learning to understand each other. Daniel told her about music, songs sung around fires, voices rising together in joy or sorrow. He tapped a rhythm on the floor with his fingers, humming a simple tune. Leora listened with wide eyes as if she were hearing magic. Then she spoke of her own world. She described the Festival of Lights, when the trees across the city glowed brighter than ever, painting the sky in rivers of color. But her voice grew quieter as she admitted she had always watched from a balcony, alone, forbidden to join the crowd. "You are their princess," Daniel said softly. "But you are also—" "Just Leora, do you want to join them?" Her silence was the answer. One evening when she arrived, Daniel noticed her expression was different, tight, uneasy. She sat down across from him, but her hands fidgeted with the edge of her gown. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked. She looked at him, struggling with words. Finally, she managed. "Counsel, speak, say, you must gone." Daniel's heart sank. Gone as in dead? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. He felt cold. "When?" "Soon," she whispered. "They fear." "You change me," Daniel laughed bitterly. "Change you? Just because we talk?" Her gaze was steady. "Yes, because you talk. Because you say truth. Yrians, not say truth. Only silence." Daniel rubbed his face with his hands. He had known trouble was coming, but hearing it confirmed made fear twist inside him. Leora leaned closer. "I'd stop them. I try." He looked at her, surprised. "Why? You don't have to risk anything for me." She shook her head firmly. "You see me. Not crown. Not title, just me. No one ever." Her words struck him like lightning. Daniel realized he wasn't just surviving here anymore. He mattered to her. Somehow, in this strange world, he had given her something no one else dared. Honesty. But danger grew each day. Whispers in the halls grew louder. Guards watched him with sharper eyes, hands tighter on their spears. Daniel sensed his time was running short. One night, long after most of the palace had gone quiet, the cell door opened again. Daniel expected Leora, but instead 2 guards stepped inside. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Come," one said harshly in broken words. Daniel froze. His stomach turned cold. Was this it? Were they going to drag him away to be executed in the night? But before he could move, another voice cut through the shadows. "Stop! Leora!" She appeared behind them, her gown shimmering faintly in the dim light. The guards stiffened, lowering their heads. She spoke quickly in her language, her tone sharp, commanding. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, then backed out of the cell reluctantly. Daniel let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," he whispered. Leora stepped closer, her eyes burning with quiet fire. "They want you gone tonight." I stopped, "But cannot forever." Daniel nodded grimly. "Then what do we do?" For the first time, her mask of calm cracked. Fear flickered across her face. Not know." They stood close, the silence heavy around them. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, fast and loud. He looked into her glowing eyes and saw not just fear, but something else. Trust. It hit him then. This bond they had built was dangerous, not just for him, but for her too. Yet neither of them could let it go. Daniel took a deep breath. Leora, whatever happens, thank you. For listening. For seeing me as more than just a stranger. Her lips trembled slightly, then curved into the faintest smile. And you? See me, Leora, not princess. Just me. That night, long after she left, Daniel lay awake on the moss bed staring at the glowing ceiling. He knew the bond between them was no longer a simple curiosity. It was something deeper, something powerful. But in the shadows of the palace, enemies whispered, waiting for their chance. And Daniel knew the days ahead would test not just his survival, but the fragile, dangerous connection he and Leora had built. The palace slept under the glow of thousands of softly pulsing lights, but Daniel could not. Each creak of the building, each whisper in the distance made him tense. He had learned to read the signs. Guards speaking in low tones, shadows moving too quickly. The faint hum of energy weapons charging. He had thought the hardest part was surviving the crash. But now he understood the real danger. This world was alive with rules he could not fully comprehend. One misstep could mean death, not just for him, but for Leora. Leora visited him that night, her silver hair glowing faintly under the soft light. She did not smile as she usually did. Instead, her eyes carried worry. They come, she whispered, using the few words she had learned in his language. Council, they plan harm tonight. Daniel's stomach twisted. Harm you or me? She hesitated. Both. His heart pounded. He knew this was the moment he had feared since the whispers in the halls began. Yet despite the fear, he felt a surge of determination. He would not leave this room while she faced danger. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. We need a plan. They want to separate us, right? Or worse. Then we don't run. They won't catch us if we fight smart. Leora nodded, her eyes flickering with a mix of fear and resolve. Yes, smart. Hours passed and the tension grew. The palace doors creaked and faint footsteps echoed in the corridors outside. Daniel positioned himself near the door, ready to act. His hands trembled slightly, but his mind was sharp. Suddenly, the cell door burst open. A group of palace guards, their spears glowing bright, stormed in. Stay back, Daniel shouted, stepping forward. He had no weapon, only his courage and determination. The guards advanced, eyes cold and unfeeling. Before the first strike could land, Leora stepped between him and the guards. Her presence was commanding, far more than Daniel had ever seen. Stop, she said in a voice that rang through the room like a bell. The guards froze. Daniel could see the confusion in their eyes. They knew their orders, but the princess's command carried a weight that even they could not ignore. They want him gone, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But I say, no. Daniel stared at her in awe. She was risking everything to protect him. The realization struck him deeply. He could no longer think of survival alone. He had to protect her too. The guards slowly backed away, their weapons still ready, but unwilling to cross her. Leora turned to Daniel. We leave now, secret, he nodded. Where? Her eyes scanned the room. Then she pointed to a small passage hidden behind a glowing mural. Daniel did not question it. He trusted her instinct. They slipped into the passage, moving as silently as possible. The air was cooler here, damp and smelling of earth. It twisted and turned, carrying them away from the main corridors. Daniel kept close, his senses alert. Every shadow, every faint sound felt like a threat. Finally, they reached a hidden exit that opened to the palace's outer wall. Beyond it, the city stretched wide, glowing under the night sky. They paused, catching their breath. Go? Daniel whispered. Leora nodded. Go. Fast. They ran along the wall, careful to stay out of sight. Daniel had never imagined an alien city so vast and strange. Bridges of crystal connected towers and glowing symbols lit the streets below. From their vantage point, he could see guards moving in search patterns. Time was short. Suddenly, a loud alarm sounded, echoing across the city. Red lights flashed along the palace towers. The council had discovered their escape. They know, Leora said, her voice tense. We must run faster. Daniel pushed himself harder. His legs burned, but adrenaline carried him forward. Leora moved with effortless grace beside him, her speed unnatural for a human. Yet she paused occasionally to check on him. They reached a secluded garden atop one of the palace towers. Bioluminescent flowers glowed softly, casting gentle light on their path. Daniel realized they had found a temporary refuge. Safe. For now, Leora said, her words trembling. Daniel nodded. We need a plan. They'll come for us. She studied him, her eyes searching his. You, human. Brave, why risk? He smiled, though it was weak. Because I can't let anyone hurt you, not you. Not the real Leora, her expression softened. No one. Say that before. They sat together among the glowing flowers, hearts pounding. Daniel realized how fragile this moment was, yet how precious. In a world ruled by strict rules and fear, they had found a connection that went beyond duty or fear. The night passed slowly. From their hidden garden, they could see patrols searching the palace, guards moving methodically. The city was alive with lights and whispers, yet Daniel felt a strange sense of calm. He had never expected to find courage in himself, nor to witness bravery in someone else so extraordinary. As dawn approached, Leora spoke. We cannot hide forever. They, too many, must fight. Daniel nodded. Then we fight smart. Together. They spent the early hours preparing. Daniel observed the environment, noting exits, blind spots, and potential traps. Leora shared her knowledge of the palace defenses, the guard rotations, and the council's routines. Step by step, they crafted a plan, not just to escape, but to survive long enough to prove Daniel's presence was not a threat, but a truth that could not be silenced. By midday, they moved. Stealth guided their steps as they navigated hidden paths, avoiding patrols and sentries. Every encounter tested their nerves and trust. Daniel saw Leora in a new light, not only as a princess, but as a strategic, intelligent leader who risked everything for honesty and compassion. But the council would not relent. From the highest towers, they sent forces to intercept the fleeing pair. The streets became battlegrounds of shadows, as Daniel and Leora used agility, cunning, and quick thinking to evade capture. At one point, a squad of elite guards cornered them in a narrow alley. Daniel froze, knowing there was no escape forward. Leora grabbed his hand. Trust in me. She leaped onto a ledge, pulling Daniel with her. Together, they climbed along the glowing walls, using agility and courage in place of weapons. Daniel's arms screamed in protest, but he did not falter. Each step brought them closer to safety. Finally, they reached the edge of the city. Below stretched the glowing forests, untamed and wild. They paused, catching their breath, hearts racing. We leave? Daniel asked. Yes, Leora said firmly. Out. World safe. For now. Then, truth, Daniel nodded. Then let's go. Together they leapt into the unknown, trusting each other and the bond they had forged in the shadows. The city lights shrank behind them as they disappeared into the glowing wilderness. For the first time, Daniel felt that bravery, honesty, and trust were more powerful than fear. And for the first time, he realized that Leora, the princess who had paused at his words, was no longer just royalty to him. She was a person, alive and real, and he would protect her no matter what dangers came next. The sun rose over the alien city, casting long beams of golden light across the glowing towers. Daniel and Leora crouched behind the thick foliage of the forest outside the palace walls. Their breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts, hearts still racing from their escape the previous night. They had survived patrols, traps, and the shadowed streets of the palace. But Daniel knew that danger still loomed. The council would not let a human walk free after defying their rules, and Leora's bold decision to protect him would not go unchallenged. Can we stay hidden? Daniel asked, glancing at the vast city in the distance. Leora shook her head. No, cannot hide. Council, send soldiers. Search everywhere. We face them. Must choice. Daniel's stomach tightened. He had never fought an entire alien city before. And yet, when he looked at Leora, he saw determination burning in her eyes. She was ready to confront her world, to defy her council, and to stand for what was true. We'll face them together, Daniel said firmly. I won't let them hurt you. Leora's silver hair caught the light, framing her glowing eyes. She took a deep breath, as if gathering every ounce of courage she had. Then, let's go. They moved silently through the forest, using shadows and natural cover to approach the city gates. Daniel marveled at her agility. She moved like a predator and protector combined, guiding him, warning him when branches or uneven ground could slow them down. As they reached the edge of the city, a squad of armored guards blocked their path. Their spears glowed and their eyes were filled with suspicion and anger. The council had sent elite troops ready to capture or kill. Stop, Daniel shouted. The guards paused, but they did not move aside. Leora stepped forward, her presence commanding. "We choose truth," she declared in the clear, confident voice she had rarely used outside her chambers. Not threat, only honest." The guards hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. A murmur of whispers ran through their ranks. Even though Daniel could not understand their words, he felt the shift, the uncertainty in their formation. "You defy counsel," one guard finally said, stepping forward. Leora did not flinch. "Yes, defy. Truth, stronger than fear. Cannot silence heart." Daniel's chest tightened. He had never seen anyone, alien or human, speak with such bravery. It was dangerous. She risked her title, her position, even her life. Yet she stood firm. Suddenly, from the palace gates, a horn sounded, a warning to the city. The council had arrived, their silhouettes visible against the rising sun. They were tall, imposing figures, clad in ceremonial armor that gleamed in the morning light. Daniel could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The council stepped forward, and the lead figure raised a hand. "Princess Leora," the voice rang out, cold and commanding. "Step aside. He is forbidden. You must obey." Leora straightened, her gaze unwavering. She turned to Daniel briefly. "Stay. Behind me," she said softly. Daniel nodded. He could see now that this was no longer about him alone. It was about her choice, her voice, her courage. "I choose him," Leora declared, her voice echoing across the plaza. "He speaks truth. He sees—" "Leora, not crown, not title. Just me," gasps rang through the crowd. The council stiffened, exchanging shocked glances. This had never happened before. A princess had never declared a human as her personal choice. "You defy the laws of our people," the lead council member shouted. "I defy lies," Leora replied. "I defy silence. I speak truth." Daniel stepped forward, heart pounding. "I don't want to take anything from anyone," he said, his voice steady. "I only want her safe. I only want her to be seen as herself." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. For a moment, Daniel feared they would be struck down immediately. But then something remarkable happened. The crowd of citizens who had gathered silently to watch began to murmur. One by one, voices rose, repeating Leora's words in their own tongue. Truth, honesty, heart. The council's authority, absolute for centuries, began to crack under the weight of the people's voices. Leora's bravery had awakened something in them. They realized that the princess, the symbol of their civilization, was not just a figurehead. She was alive, capable of thought, choice, and feeling. The lead council member's face reddened in anger, but even he could not ignore the growing support of the people. Daniel's hand found Leora's. She squeezed it gently, giving him a faint smile. "You see?" she whispered. "Truth. Stronger." The council finally stepped back, murmuring among themselves. No one spoke the word execution. No one raised a weapon. Leora had won, not through force, but through honesty and courage. For the first time, Daniel saw the city itself seem to breathe differently. The glowing towers pulsed with a softer light, almost as if acknowledging the shift in power. Leora turned fully to Daniel, her eyes shining. "You saved me, not with fight, but heart." Daniel laughed softly, relief flooding through him. "You saved yourself, Leora. I just happened to be there." She shook her head. "No, you help. You see me, that new." The crowd began to disperse slowly, but the feeling in the air was permanent. Daniel realized that he had changed more than Leora. In a small way, he had changed the world, showing them that honesty and bravery could defy fear and tradition. Later, in a quiet chamber high above the city, Daniel and Leora finally rested. She removed her crown, setting it aside. Leora," she said softly. "No princess now, just me." Daniel smiled. "Then let's forget the rules. Let's just be us, for now." She laughed, the sound like wind through the glowing trees. "Yes, us." For hours they spoke quietly, trading words and stories. Daniel told her more about Earth, its mountains, seas, and people. Leora shared her hopes, dreams, and fears. Each story, each shared laugh, bound them closer. Finally, as the twin suns began to set, painting the city in warm gold and violet, Leora looked at Daniel with seriousness. "You changed my life, I thank." Daniel took her hand gently. "And you changed mine, Leora. I will never forget this. Never forget you." She smiled, a small, radiant smile. Then stay. With me, Daniel nodded. I will. In that moment, surrounded by the glowing towers and the whispers of a changed city, Daniel realized something profound. Courage, honesty, and love had no boundaries, not between species, not between worlds. And sometimes a single truthful word, spoken from the heart, could change everything. The Yrian princess, once untouchable, now paused, not in shock but in wonder, realizing that the human before her had opened a door to a world she had never known, and she chose to step through it hand in hand with him. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and for the first time, Daniel saw the princess not as royalty, not as a symbol, but as Leora, the person she had always been beneath the crown. And in that quiet, glowing world, two hearts stood together, brave, honest, and free.